Hey, I'm Matt Duckworth with Deal Camp, and today we're talking about how to buy businesses safely in industries that you don't know. So we already talked about the apprentice model and the whole case with Wayne Huizenga, the only guy who's actually achieved Fortune 500 status with 3 different companies in 3 different industries. So if you didn't see that video, go check it out because that's like a really great case study. There's a lot to learn there. Today we're talking about industry peer groups. And so I'm going to walk you through why we like industry peer groups whenever we're trying to go and understand industries that we want to buy companies in. And I'm going to also walk you through just an example what you might see I was involved in a group called IT Nation years ago for IT managed services. And so I'm going to walk you through some of those specifics. But let's talk about industry peer groups and why they're important if you're trying to get up to speed on an industry and how they help you take risk off the table. So you learn how businesses actually work in that industry from real business owners. You're going to be going to dinner with people, lunch, breakfast, whatever, and talking to these folks, and you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. One of the things that happens is a business owner will be like, man, easy to operate. I struggle with sales. I struggle with marketing. Wish I had that figured out. And if you're a sales and marketing person, you may say, that is exactly what I need to hear. And so that may tell you, I need to move into this. You may also hear, if you're a sales and marketing person who's weak on the operation side, man, easy to get customers, terrible to operate this thing. Can't get employees to show up. It's just like a pain in the butt. You may say, this ain't for me. So that's one reason. 2 is, are there lots of people who have achieved what you want to achieve in the room whenever you look around? If you look around and you see lots of people who are where you want to be in life, they're driving the car, they got the clothes, whatever, you can't necessarily look in the bank account, but if you get deep enough into these peer groups, you will learn that you'll learn where people are at financially. If you look around and there's not a lot of people who are doing really well financially, that's a problem. And that's probably a sign that that's not a good industry. And you probably need to get out of that. If everybody seems to be doing pretty well, nobody's stressed, like it's just, I was here in this industry for a little while and all of a sudden I'm making $1 million a year and I don't know what to do with myself, pay attention. That's probably a pretty good business. So that's one of the big reasons why I like this, is because it kind of cuts to the chase a little bit. You'll also be able to find deals because you're going to be talking to folks and letting them know that, hey, I'm out there looking for a deal. And that word will travel if you present that the right way. If you're specific enough about what you're looking for, those guys and women know each other, they talk to each other, and it'll travel. And so if you're a serious person, you've come prepared, they like you, you sound like you're going to be able to do a real deal and ante up, cut a check, then chances are somebody's going to at least hear about it. You might have a conversation. It also helps you find talented partners and vendors, people who can help you whenever you're in your business, finally, after you acquire it. And that can also be like really, really critical if you need key talent. Also, your vendors are a big source of lots of help, especially in B2B. And then finally, you can learn what to avoid. So there's going to be a lot of dumb mistakes that people will tell you about freely because they want to feel like they're mentoring you, just because it's like an ego thing, I think. And so that's why we like peer groups. This, in like to brass tacks this thing, typically if you get into a peer group, it's going to take you about a year to get really embedded, for them to know you, for them to trust you a little bit, and for you to get invited to some things, and for you to feel like you kind of have a place there and where you can really talk to people. Unless you're meeting like maybe once a month, that's a little bit better, but a lot of these peer groups, I'll show you here in a second, meet quarterly. And you're typically going to spend about $5,000 or more. Some of them are really expensive. Some of them, they've got like online forums that you can get into for free. So it's all across the board, but to be able to go to some place, be around people, you're gonna have to travel, you're gonna have to get hotel, and so it's gonna cost you a little bit of money. So that's why I like it. And the example, the way that I learned this is this IT Nation. Is I was doing a project with a friend of mine, and he was a part of this group, and I got invited. And so once a quarter they meet, and you're in this room with about 10 different business owners. All of them are like at different levels of success for this one stage that they had figured out was like really common for business owners. So they weren't quite startups. They were like pretty maturing businesses, but they weren't big behemoth businesses. And so you got all these guys who are kind of at the same place, and they had a group facilitator who was in one of those bigger businesses. And so he had gone through what everybody in the room had gone through, and was like this mentor to everybody. So he was the facilitator, and nobody was competitive because they were all spread across the country. So everybody's sharing freely. What's the best practice? How is everybody doing financially? And you learn things that you would never learn if you're not in that room. It was where the action was at. And so the other cool thing about it is that vendors would come in and really like bend over backwards to help, because they wanted to get into the peer group, buddy group. You know, they wanted to be the one who's taking everybody out for dinner, not because we felt like we were obligated to do it, but because we wanted to. And so vendors were really, really helpful, and there's tons of resources there. One of the great things that they did in this is they basically benchmarked what does a really good IT services company look like? You know, what's the margins? How do they go about selling their stuff? How do they go about marketing things? And so you can pick up all of these basically playbooks on here's the best way to do something for this industry, for the way that you're trying to go about it. And if I was going to go into that industry, which I'm definitely not, I'm not wired up for this. But if I was, I'd go in and I would just grab every single one of those playbooks. I would talk to every vendor. I would talk to as many business owners as possible, and I would see what's working. I'd go visit businesses just to like steal best practices. And then I'd take them and collect them up, and then I would go execute my acquisition. So that's the kind of power that you get. And you may spend a little time doing it, but the speed at which you can move, because you basically took all of these things that people spent years, maybe decades figuring out, and you get to just cherry pick them and put them in your pocket and take them to your next acquisition. And that's super, super valuable, and it turns into dollars. You know, it's hard to calculate how much more money you might make, but it might be 20%, it might be 50%, it might be 100%, it might be 500 or 1,000%. It could be really, really huge if you find a couple of really key things like how to sell, how to market those products. So that's why we like industry peer groups. And if you're looking to get up to speed on an industry and you got a little bit of time to be involved, it's a great way to get started. Hope that helps.